I'm going to sit at the welcome table. All right, here we go. I'm
I'm
going to
gonna
sit
sit
at the
at the
welcome
welcome
table.
table. I'm
I'm going to sit at the welcome
welcome
table one of these days. Hallelujah. I'm going to sit at the welcome table. I'm going to sit at the welcome table one of these days. All of the people gonna sit together. Oh, all of the people gonna sit together one of these days. Hallelujah. All of the people gonna sit together. All of the people gonna sit together one of these days. Now, Jerry, I'm looking at you. We may have to get a new verse for this. Something like trees surround the welcome table. Oh, trees surround the welcome table all these days. Hallelujah. Trees surround the welcome table, 'cause I'm gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. Oh, I'm gonna work for full inclusion. Yeah, I'm gonna work for full inclusion all of my days. Hallelujah. I'm gonna work for full inclusion. I'm gonna work for full inclusion all of my days. All of my days. All right, everybody take a good stretch. Woo, woo, woo. And yeah. Oh, I'm gonna sit at the welcome table. Oh, I'm gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. Hallelujah. I'm gonna sit at the welcome table. I'm gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. Oh, I'm gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. Well, I'm gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. One of these days. Welcome to the church in Ocean Park. And today we have got Rachel Rose Lucky giving our welcome. Yes, go for it.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. The church in Ocean Park is a caring interfaith congregation. We celebrate diversity, treating ourselves and others with respect. Our gatherings support, educate, and challenge us in our relations to self, others, and the world. Embracing creative expression, singing at every opportunity, and working for social justice are all parts of our spiritual life together. You may be wondering if you are welcome. In honor of Pride Month, you are welcome if you are straight, bi, gay, lesbian, asexual, demisexual, or pansexual. You are welcome if you are cisgender, transgender, bigender, non binary, non gender conforming, or two spirit, or all of the above, or none of the above. We are an interfaith community. So you are welcome if you are Jewish, if you are Muslim, if you are Hindu, Buddhist, Christian, Wiccan, atheist, or some combination or something else altogether. We extend a special invitation to those who are single, married, divorced, gay, transgender, very rich, or living paycheck to paycheck. We extend a special invitation to those who are, for those who are for those who have crying newborns, just browsing, just woke up, or just got out of jail. We do not care if you're more religious than the Pope or haven't been in a synagogue since your nephew's bar mitzvah. We extend a special invitation to those who are over 60 but not grown up yet, and to teenagers who are growing up too fast. We invite soccer moms, tree huggers, latte sippers, vegetarians, and junk food eaters. We invite those who are in recovery or still addicted. We invite you if you're having problems or you're down in the dumps, or if you don't like organized religion, or if you are standing in the need of prayer. We offer a special invitation to those who work too hard, don't work, have lost their jobs because of the pandemic, or are frontline workers. We welcome those who can't spell or because they are bored with staying home all day and are way tired of being on Zoom. We invite those who are inked, pierced, or both. We invite tourists, seekers and doubters, bleeding hearts, and you. Welcome to the church in Ocean Park.
Yes, welcome all. You may be wondering why I'm here welcoming you all these Sundays now. Well, I call to mind the words of one of our founders of the Methodist Church, John Wesley, when he said, "The world is my parish." So we have people from all over the world, all peoples joining us here at the church in Ocean Park. The world is our parish. So I'm here because our pastor, minister, Reverend Janet McKeithen, is still on sabbatical, and so we are carrying on in her absence. I should be careful when I say carrying on because, as you know, words and expressions mean different things in different countries. Where I come from in Trinidad and Tobago, carrying on is partying and jumping up and bacchanal. But we are not doing all of that. We are carrying on respectfully and wisely as we go forward with our worship and with our work. So we, the people of the church in Ocean Park, recognize that our building in Santa Monica, California, sits on stolen land. We, the settlers of this land, honor the Kish, the Tongva, the Chumash peoples. We acknowledge the harms of genocide, enslavement, forced assimilation, gender violence, and the destruction of sacred sites, the burial of historic truths, and indigenous suffering at the hands of US settler colonialism. We also acknowledge that our communities and country were built on the backs of people stolen from Africa, placed into bondage, and forced into labor. We also acknowledge that we benefit from that labor that has never been repaid. In acknowledgement, let us commit ourselves to healing by helping to create a more just and equitable world through the struggle of changing how we do things that we see as normal, that support the systems that oppress people. We apologize for this harm by pledging ourselves to be part of this culture of repair. You say, thanks be to God. So now let us prepare ourselves for the Thich Nhat Hanh as we meditate a little on these words. We sing them 3 times. I have arrived, I am home, in the here and in the now. 3 times. 1, 2, 3. I have arrived, I am home, in the here and in the now. I have arrived. I am home in the here and in the now. I have arrived. I am home in the here and in the now.
Got a song to sing you called Everything Possible by Fred Small, a cisgendered white guy who was asked by a lesbian friend if he would write a song that she could sing, a lullaby she could sing to her male son. And this is the song he came up with. We have cleared off the table the leftovers saved, washed the dishes and put them away. I have told you a story and tucked you in tight at the end of your knockabout day. As the moon sets its sails to carry you to sleep over the midnight sea, I will sing you a song no one sang to me. May it keep you good company. You can be anybody you want to be. You can love whomever you will. You can travel any country that your heart leads, and know I will love you still. You can live by yourself. You can gather friends around. You can choose one special one. And the only measure of your words and your deeds will be the love you leave behind when you're done. There are girls who grow up strong and bold. There are boys quiet and kind. Some race on ahead, some follow behind, some go in their own way in time. Some women love women, some men love men, some raise children, some never do. You can dream all the day, never reaching the end of everything possible for you. Don't be rattled by names, by taunts, by games, but seek out spirits true. If you give your friends the best part of yourself, they will give the same back to you. You can be anybody you want to be. You can love whomever you will. You can travel any country where your heart leads, and know I will love you still. You can live by yourself. You can gather friends around. You can choose one special one. And the only measure of your words and your deeds will be the love you leave behind when you're done. And the only measure of your words and deeds will be the love you leave behind when you're done.
Thank you so much for that wonderful message and song. We are now going to prepare to introduce our guest speaker for today. I have two readings too, which will help me to introduce our speaker. One comes from Elliot Page, and these are Page's words. The more I hold myself close and fully embrace who I am, the more I thrive. And these words from St. Mark's Gospel, chapter 12, in the New Testament. Love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these. So I welcome Roger Gawne to our service today. Roger Gawne comes out of a queer trans man in March of 2016, and he has dedicated himself to social justice activism in the years since that time. He has run LGBTQ plus focus clubs in his schools and organized several events for the community, including the 2021 Santa Monica Queer Prom and the 2023 UCLA Queer Prom. He has also volunteered as a facilitator with the CCEJ, that is the California Conference for Equality and Justice. And so we have a very distinguished person here with us today to share his insights with us. He has also volunteered as a facilitator for all these events since 2018, focusing primarily on racial justice. He has been connected to Reverend Janet McKeithen and the church in Ocean Park since 2018 and has worked closely with the church and community on projects like the 2021 Santa Monica Queer Prom. Roger has also spoken at the Santa Monica Conservancy event last summer, and that was to help raise money for the church's new roof. And he has also spoken at several services, both those about transgender issues and those in other general topics. So we are very happy to welcome this talented young person to share with us this morning. Roger?
Thank you all so much, Chaplain Joseph. That is an incredible introduction. Thank you. I'm humbled by that. I don't know that I'm going to be able to match all that. But hello. Howdy, everybody. My name is Roger. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm really excited to be here with all of you today. And I really appreciate you all being here with me. I do have to open by naming that I apologize, as I had intended to speak with y'all a little less than 3 months ago for Trans Day of Visibility. And then on Trans Day of Visibility, I was in a hiking accident and I was very badly injured. So I had to pull out at the last second. And I apologize for that. I am recovering smoothly. I am doing much better now. I don't know when I will be back to 100%, but I am able to do basic things again. And that is huge. So thank you all for, I know several of you reached out to me during the recovery, and I cannot say how much it meant to me. And I really want to thank you for that support. It was absolutely invaluable during a very difficult time. So thank you all for that. But what I'm here to talk about today, if it was not given away by what I was originally supposed to be here for way back in, I guess, technically April 2nd, is trans visibility. And then also because, you know, it's June, I want to really talk about trans joy and trans pride, because all of those things absolutely go together. I think that it is worth naming that, as Chaplain Joseph brought up, I originally came out in 2016, which was a very different time. And I remember at the time it felt very odd, and I remember there were a lot of different challenges that I remember facing that I thought were uniquely modern. And then not even 10 years have passed. I think it's been about 7, and it's completely different landscape with all these other completely unique challenges that are somehow still uniquely modern. And I am astounded by the way the time changes. But in any case, what I mean to say is we are currently in a time where, at least my experience, is that it is quite scary to be trans, because unlike when I was coming out, people do know or think they know what transgender means as a term. Like, I don't meet that many people anymore who've never heard the word. Unfortunately, it doesn't necessarily carry a lot of actual understanding from people that think they know what it means, so much as people have heard it used in culture wars because of the virulent and rampant transphobia that we see in modern media, particularly in political spheres. And I'm not going to talk about it too much because it's exhausting and I don't want to give them airtime. They don't deserve it from me. They don't deserve it from anybody. But I do need to name that because I think that that is a huge part of why it is so essential that we have trans visibility, trans joy, and trans pride. When I was first coming up, I understood trans visibility to be so key, in large part because I knew so many folks, myself included, who were trans, who had no idea what that meant or that that was even possible for us. And just, I know that my own experience was of feeling very miserable all the time and never quite knowing why. And it wasn't until I started meeting other trans people and realizing, oh, this is, and realized that was a possibility, and was able to finally understand what was happening with me and what I was growing up to be, which was huge and changed my life. And I could not have had that without even what little visibility, relatively little visibility there was. Incredible visibility relative to 10 years prior to itself, and relatively very little to what there is today, because we have made great strides. At the same time, now that as we saw that visibility in a general sense increase, we are now seeing the backswing of pushback from various folks. And I think that that makes it riskier to be visible, which means that I would never tell anyone on an individual level that it was our responsibility. And I cannot even claim that I am as bold as I once was. I used to take a more, what I would call, aggressively out approach in various spaces, like in my schools. And then as I got older, and frankly, in some ways I didn't need it as much. I hate this term, but I largely pass now. So I don't need to basically yell about being a trans man all the time just to be gendered correctly. But the other factor is just that I'm in much larger communities that, like, I went from a school of 3,000 to a school of about 20,000. Me being aggressively out changes virtually nothing about the UCLA community. And for the most part, the UCLA community is aware of it. So it's less helpful to my community, which was the other big goal. So I don't do it as much anymore. And I will admit that I am largely coasting and semi-closeted at, like, my job, for instance, because I'm a martial arts teacher and I work with a lot of kids. And a lot of the rhetoric right now means that it's just not safe for me to be, like, all my coworkers know, and most of our senior students know, but it is not currently safe for me to be open about being trans in front of my students, because it only takes one parent who buys into the current rhetoric to get us shut down. And that does very much scare me, but I think I know that I am not as visible as I always want to be, but I use that to add extra fuel to the spaces when I do choose it. As Chaplain Joseph mentioned, I do facilitate with the CCEJ, and I work with a lot of teenagers in that space, about high school students. And whenever I'm working with them, I go out of my way to name as quickly as possible and as repeatedly as possible that I am transgender, because I need them to see that trans people exist, that people that they respect and who are in positions potentially of authority, or people who just exist in the world. I need them to know that trans people are more than what we are caricaturized as. And I think that that is a huge part of what trans visibility is about, is showing that we are wonderful and radical and normal all at the same time, because we are everything, because we are fundamentally people and defined by our transness, and also not. And it is a very complicated issue that I think can only be solved through compassion and conscious work, which will be made it is terrifying to be visible, and it is absolutely necessary to see it. But when I think about that terror, I come back to trans joy and trans pride, because I am absolutely so fundamentally proud of who I am as a trans person. which is part of why I hate the term and concept even of passing, because it puts this idea that if I look like a cis man, that should be the be all end all, that should be my end goal, and that is the most desirable thing. When I tell people in my day-to-day that I am trans, and I know how they mean it, and I do appreciate the intention behind it, but people love to tell me like, oh, I would never have known. Oh, you passed so well. And it's like, well, you tell me this because you think that this is what I should want. That what is desirable is to come across as cisgender to you. And that is not what I want. I do want, I guess in some spaces I want the safety of it, but it's not so much that I ever want to be actively seen as a cis man as I just want to be seen as a man. And a lot of people assume that that means a cis man, if not otherwise specified. I am so fundamentally proud of my trans identity and all that it has meant for me and my community and the radical possibility and transgression within it. I think that I have been trying to think about how to put it into words for weeks as I've prepared for this message, and I still cannot tell you everything that it means to me and that it means to the world of the possibilities of transness. For a small example, I've been recently doing research on the role of trans people and communities in environmental justice. And even in just that, finding so many examples of ways in which trans experience and thought have been able to contribute so much to improving environmental justice as a field and as a practice, and the unique connections that we as trans people can form with the other than human natural world, with the ways that we can learn about adaptability and change and learn that can help us combat settler colonialist ideas of restoration and conservation. And there is so much richness to it, even though everything I found in my research, every single paper I read had to say that there was a lack of data and a lack of research on it, because again, we are lacking that visibility, but we can build it. And we build it in large part by being willing to have and embrace and speak our pride, because there is so much to be proud of as trans people. And finally, just thinking about trans joy, I really do fundamentally believe that trans joy is resistance. And I've heard that phrase a lot over the years. And I think when I was younger, I would hear that and go, I mean, yeah, sure. But I've gotten older and had to sit with it more, and also seen the pop culture ideas change. I cannot say it enough that trans joy truly is resistance, and to live and love and thrive as a trans person is a deeply radical and transformative thing. I know that for myself, that my transness has been a very liberating experience for me. And I have known people who, upon meeting them, and they knew me as trans, I would meet them and they would tell me, oh, I'm a cis lesbian. And they would know me for like 2 months and see what I had going on and go, oh, actually, because just to see people, my experience as a young trans person who did not know I was trans was just seeing trans people at all, and that changing my perspective and realizing that was possible for me. What is, I think, even more powerful is for my friends who knew that transness was a possibility, but assumed it could not be for them until they saw someone who was embracing trans joy and trans pride, and that transness was not suffering inherently. There are aspects of it which can hurt, especially in the transphobic society in which we find ourselves. But that is not to say that transness is suffering. It is a beautiful thing that I cannot speak highly of enough. And I think that having that added layer of visibility and being openly joyous and proud and loving of one another and our communities and of ourselves and of our transness is one of the most powerful and potent things we can do. So I wanted to come into here today and share that with you and tell you how much I love being trans, and that I am finding so much joy in my life, especially in my recovery. It has not been easy. And I'll admit, my transness has not been the top of my thought while I was trying to get my arms working again, because I broke both my arms and part of my skull. I had other priorities. But even then, just as I've been able to like venture out into the world again and start doing things again and reconnecting with my community and with people and nature and the outdoors and all of it, and reconnecting with my body, I've honestly felt like I have a scar on my arm from when they bolted my arm back together because the break was so bad. And I have several scars from gender affirming surgeries, but I honestly feel that this one, partially because of just how visible it is, because it's right on my forearm, but also just because of what it means to me, feels like it deeply resonates with what I see my gender as. And the one phrase that keeps coming back to me is that it means I survived, and it means that I lived when I did not have to. And I think that a lot of my transness is a similar thing of just knowing that what my gender is and what my gender expression can be and how I can move through the world is like, this means that I get to live, and I get to live well, and I get to live authentically and joyously and radically when I did not have to. And there are a lot of people who might prefer that I did not. And yeah, as I've been reconnecting with joy and love and all of it in these last few months, I keep coming back to knowing that this is what it is to be joyous and to have this radical love and radical hope, which I think are so fundamentally important in social justice at all. And I have deeply connected with them from a perspective of trans joy, and I wanted to share that with all of you. So thank you all for listening to my rambling, and happy Pride, everybody.
Thank you so much, Roger, for that lovely insight into your experience. And we are going to now have a song from Larry, and following that song, we will have our time of sharing.
Thanks, Roger. That was great. It's so inspiring. I'll try to get through the song without getting hung up on what you said and just going back to it. It's a song by Cyndi Lauper called True Colors. You with your sad eyes, don't be discouraged. Oh, I realize it's hard to take courage in a world full of troubled people. You can lose sight of it all. The darkness inside you can make you feel so small. And I see your true colors shining through. I see your true colors, and that's why I love you. So don't be afraid to let them show your true colors. True colors are beautiful, like a rainbow. Show me a smile then. Don't be unhappy. Can't remember when I last saw you laughing. If this world makes you crazy and you've taken all you can bear, just call me up, 'cause I will always be there. And I see your true colors shining through. I see your true colors, and that's why I love you. So don't be afraid to let them show your true colors. True colors are beautiful. I see your true colors shining through. I see your true colors, and that's why I love you. So don't be afraid to let them show your true colors. True colors are beautiful, like a rainbow, like a rainbow.
Thank you so much. One of my favorite tunes as well.
Oh, good.
I remember composing even a sermon out of it some years ago. I see your true colors. Wonderful. So we have now a time of sharing. We can ask a question, or we can make our own comment, or add our own insight or experience for this time of sharing. So I see a few hands up. I saw Craig Ali first, and then we'll go to Rachel and then Bonnie.
Thank you very much, Joseph, and also thank you very much, Roger. I'll make a brief comment which will lead into a question. And it's really an assessment of where things are in this nation. I think more than anything else, the hatred and the hostility for communities of color as well as the transgender community is off the chain, coming essentially from those folks who identify themselves as white Christian nationalists. And I'm wondering specifically in terms of your assessment as you've worked in the transgender community as well as the African American and or multiracial, multi-ethnic community that seeks, some, I guess for lack of a better term, coexistence. What would you say are the biggest obstacles specifically for both communities, and then the transgender Black community that is hit with what most would call a double, and in some cases a triple whammy? What would you say those biggest obstacles are in terms of achieving that question of inclusion?
Thank you for that, Craig. That is incredibly potent. And I really appreciate you bringing directly the intersectionality aspect to it, because I was going to. I think that for myself, I want to name from the top, I am a white trans man, and the majority of my formal background is in racial justice and white allyship and anti-racism. And I think that I do a lot of work in it and I do a lot of listening. I wouldn't feel super comfortable speaking out specifically on that, though I will talk about what it means for trans people and trans people of color, because I wouldn't be absolutely remiss to talk about the obstacles that the trans community faces if I were to not mention that trans community of color are hit the hardest by it. Especially trans women of color, we know face some of the highest rates of violence and discrimination. And I think that in the fight for liberation across communities, the most essential things to remember are that we are all in this together. And even though I do not share identities with folks across every oppressed community, there are folks within my communities who do. And I think that that's the first step to building that. For I think folks who get too caught, I think it's very easy for some folks. I see this in a lot of white queer and trans people, where they will attempt to hide in their queerness and transness and not address their whiteness. And this is something that I think is a very easy mistake to make, and a very dangerous one. I think that when one is falling into those traps, the first step is to recognize, where our overlapping communities are, even if that's not me personally. I think that coalition building and camaraderie and just, radical love, radical hope, radical acceptance and compassion between ourselves and actively trying to listen and seek out and grow and challenge ourselves in those ways in which we are privileged is the most important thing that we can do, as well as building community as strongly as we can across all of it. And I think the biggest barriers that we face are through systemic oppression. We see a lot of that through just the way that capitalism is built. We see through the history and legacy of settler colonialism and white nationalism and imperialism. I think that these go absolutely hand in hand. I mean, I think that a huge part of the reason transphobia has to exist in the way that it does is as a product of capitalist patriarchy. Because for me as a trans man, if I was assigned female at birth and then it can transition into male privilege, that means inherently that the entire system of patriarchy is a direct refutation of the entire system of patriarchy, which is inherently tied in with capitalist patriarchy and with white supremacy, because everything we know about the gender binary is a product of and tool of white imperialism. there are countless models of gender, sex, and sexual orientation around the world. And the one that we are most familiar with today was developed and largely enforced not only as part of imperialism, but even within like domestic Western Europe. It was a lot looser before the imperialist pushes that we saw several hundred years ago. I think the biggest barriers that we faced are through systemic oppression and through violence. And I am always hesitant to call out like infighting between groups as a barrier, because I often think that there are legitimate grievances to be had, particularly when folks like when white queer folks don't address their white privilege and are racist and refuse to take accountability. I think that there are very legitimate grievances that people of color have with that, people of color who are in queer and trans communities, and especially those who aren't. And I would never say that like I don't want to describe that as infighting, because that is a very real critique that will prevent coalition building. And so but that is not the fault of people who are critiquing. It is the fault of those who are not taking accountability. So I think that the biggest barriers that we face are folks within our communities who are unwilling to take an intersectional mindset and take accountability for themselves as they fight for liberation. And I think that externally, it's in just the complex and deeply entrenched systemic oppressions that we are all facing that are interconnected to prevent any of us from succeeding. I hope that was coherent.
Certainly. Rachel?
That was very coherent, Roger. And I can't disagree with anything you said. The white Christian nationalists, aka neo-Nazis, the fascists, for fascism to work, they need a boogeyman. And up until 2015, it was gay marriage. Supreme Court nixed that. And so what I believe we saw was a shift to probably one of the smallest and most vulnerable groups, us transgender people. And that has been playing out because they know that, they can't, I mean, they've been doing it more and more often, coming out as blatantly racist, but they still to some degree mind their P's and Q's. But when it comes to transgender people, because we don't have the numbers, we don't have millions and millions and millions of people. We account for, I don't know, a couple of million people in the United States out of 300 some odd million people. So I think that the problem that we face is that the biggest barrier is that we don't have strength in numbers. And that's why allyship to the trans community is key for trans liberation. And the other thing I'd like to mention is when I first started my transition in 2013, not too much before your transition, I did, my research, did my reading, and one of the blogs I came across was that at that time, it was advisable to transition in the place that you're living at and then become passable and then move to a new city and not tell a soul that you're trans. And that was a means of protection. Literally, a means of protection, like a chameleon. And so, I think that we should continue to be loud and proud. I know I am. I don't call myself a woman. I call myself a trans woman. I am a type of woman. I am a transgender woman. And I make that distinction on purpose because I'm not ashamed of it. I'm proud of it. And so I don't know if you have any thoughts on any of that, but that's my reflection on the discussion today.
Okay, well, we'll take a couple more and then we'll come back to Roger. Could we? We'll take a couple more. Bonnie, and then I see Dr. Kim as well.
Well, first of all, I want to congratulate you, Roger, on your quick recovery. That's phenomenal. Secondly, I want to say I'm envious of your trans joy. That's music to my heart. And I think I heard you mention environmental justice. Could you elaborate on that? The connection between trans and environmental justice? I'm really curious on that one.
Okay, one more and then we'll come back to you, Roger. We have Dr. Kim, and then Roger, after you comment, we have two others. We have three other persons with their hands up. I can see you. Okay,
was there somebody that had their hand up that didn't do it on the computer? I don't know if we missed somebody. If not, just perhaps a short question. I hear people saying, well, you shouldn't have people getting gender affirming care for their children because children don't know what they want more. They their children should wait to do that until they're adults. And what do you think about that, Roger? And is there a specific age for that, or does it really depend on the person? And that's my question.
All right, we've covered a bit of a wide swath here. I want to thank all of you first of all, especially Rochelle. Thank you very much. I don't have too much to add to what you were saying, Rochelle. I do hear you, especially on the thing about safety of like getting out once you're passable. I was really lucky that around the time I became passable was around the time I finished high school and then went off to college. And so even though I'm still technically in the same city, but it's Los Angeles, so it's big. And I can sort of hide in that. And yeah, I would say that advice still rings true for a lot of us, especially I think for trans feminine folks who frankly face a lot more danger and violence than trans masculine folks like myself do. And then for Bonnie, I did a whole research thing that I'm still technically working on the role of trans people in communities and environmental justice that I cannot get into it too much because we will be here all day. But I will say that I found my research was guided by two specific. So I'm trying to go into environmental justice. That's my career aspiration. I'm studying environmental science right now at UCLA in order to aid in that. And I entered this research. I started this project because environmental justice is primarily rooted in racial justice, as it should be. And I think that's a great rooting, but it meant that I always viewed my transness and my environmental justice aspirations as separate parts of myself. And I had reflected on that and wanted to know if there could be more to that story. And in doing some research, I found a couple books and a few papers that were directly related, and then a whole bunch of stuff that was like adjacent, and that I've been reading and poring over and just really loving. If you're interested in this specific topic, I would really recommend the book Underflows by Cleo Wolfe Hazard, which was fantastic and probably one of the best I read for this specific thing. There's also Trans Ecology, which is an anthology book put out by Routledge about 2 years ago. And those were both great. Trans Ecology is quite dense. It's definitely written by folks who have been writing queer and trans theory for like 30 years and have apparently forgotten that sometimes you're new to the topic and want to read a book about it because, oh boy, are there a whole bunch of words in there that don't even have definitions. If you try to look up what they mean, you just get a paragraph of vibes and they don't actually tell you what it means. But overall, it is still very strong and very good, especially if you are well-versed in that theory, which I'm getting there. And I think that Underflows is much more beginner friendly, though there is some, and I think that it does a good job of defining the terms that are more hard to get to. Yes, that's the one, Louise. Thank you. Oh, it's beautiful. I love it so much. I loved that book. It's so good. I wish there was an audiobook version of it because it was just so great. But no, I love it. Highly, highly recommend that. But yeah, I think that what I was finding, my research was following two specific questions, which were if basically, The first being, are trans people and communities disproportionately impacted and or targeted by environmental injustice? And I found that we were, because trans communities, of course, face other sorts of discrimination and violence, which do carry over into environmental justice concerns, particularly when we look at economic discrimination. But I also found that there was more specific trans-focused impact, especially when we looked at things like disaster relief and climate immigration, because trans people don't tend to have a very good time in immigration. And we're seeing an increased amount of climate migration right now, and we're going to continue seeing it as natural disasters continue to grow and spread. So those were some unique hotspots, as well as the active exclusion of trans people from environmentalist and environmental justice movements thus far. And then my secondary question was if trans people and communities brought unique perspectives, skills, or values to the movement. And I found that we do, in ways that I think are very well fleshed out in Underflows, which Louise put in the chat. Thank you so much. And they specifically called out a lot of things, particularly around trans communities and people having unique perspectives on and acceptance in relationship to like adaptability and change, which are absolutely essential in restoration, especially in combating like very settler colonialist ideas of restoration, of seeing humanity as separate from nature, as if we are not part of it. And I think that there's a lot of restorative push of like, oh, we have to try to reset it to before us. And it's like, well, we're still here. So no, it's not about trying to engineer a new thing that we think used to exist. It's about trying to protect what's here and live with it. And seeing that trans thoughts around change can help with that. I saw a lot about trans and queer relationships to grief and how that can help us combat climate change and the mass extinction event we're currently facing. I read a lot about trans perspectives on emotion in general, and sort of transing and queering scientific discussion, which is frequently very cold, especially when in writing or at conferences, and being able to blend those two, and certain projects that have been done on that. There were other things, and they're slipping my mind, but that was a lot of what I was reading about, and I highly recommend the book, and I'm happy to talk about it more. I did a whole presentation on it actually very recently, and I can send you the link to the video if you'd like to watch it. The video is about 30 minutes of my presentation. And then to your point, Dr. Kim, about transitioning young. If I'm being very honest, the entire issue has been blown completely out of proportion as a tactic of fear-mongering in a way that has been happening for as long as I have ever heard about trans people, and likely longer. I will say a couple things. First of all, the gender transition options that are available to young people are incredibly limited. Absolutely nobody is performing surgeries on 12-year-olds. It's not happening. What happens if you come out at a young age, if you have access to medical transition at all? I mean, most young people who come out, especially if they're actually children, like prepubescent children, it is a haircut and a change of wardrobe, and you start trying out a new name. Not a legal thing, nothing medical happens. Later on, you might try out what's called puberty blockers, which have been in use for decades. We know that they are safe, and they just delay puberty to either prevent it entirely in some cases, or to allow it to happen later if folks do come around to realizing that they are not in fact transgender, or otherwise want their predetermined puberty to occur, or have to stop taking them. We know that, so these exist. These are what's usually available to young people. It is not until a person is usually at least 16 that they are even eligible to begin something like hormones or any sort of surgical option. And I'll tell you, trying to navigate the surgery stuff before you're 18 is a nightmare. Very few people are able to get access to anything. I do think that there should be less barriers than there are to young people pursuing gender affirming care, especially considering like the requirements around things like parental consent for folks who are 16 and older, which are not typically, at least, thinking into pre-Roe. But back when we still had Roe v. Wade, if you were 16 and wanted to say go on birth control, you could do that without parental consent, but you could not seek out gender affirming care. And I think that that was a double standard that was actively harmful to trans youth. I also want to call out that trans people face very disproportionately high rates of suicide, depression, suicidal ideation, and other mental health concerns and mental illness. And I don't want to get too specific on the numbers because I want all of you to be able to have good days after this, but I'll tell you the numbers are bad. And it's especially prominent in trans youth. And what we look at with gender affirming care the rate at which, if someone released an antidepressant that was as effective in mitigating suicidal ideation as gender affirming care, it would be heralded as a miracle. No antidepressant has ever been that effective in decreasing suicide attempts. And yet, because people are terrified of what transness could mean for what they think it could be, because they need to stir up a culture war around hate, and people are terrified of like, oh, what if my kid makes a bad decision and regrets their puberty and that they choose? And it's like, well, what if they regret the puberty that you forced them to go through, that was predetermined because you wouldn't let them even go on puberty blockers? Because I'll tell you, I had to have my natural puberty, and in the transmasculine direction, there are some aspects about it that are easier, but there's a lot that's not, and it was awful to have to navigate so much. Years of, before I had top surgery, it was years of binding my chest and being in a lot of pain all the time, and like my back always hurt. It was awful, and there was no help for me. And I think that there are so many barriers to trans people already, and so many to trans young people at the intersection of transphobia and ageism, that I do think that when it comes to things like medical and legal transition on a personal level, there are things that I think that we as individuals should be doing. Like, I think that on a personal level, I do think that if you think you're come to the conclusion that you're trans, you should sit with that for about a year before you start something medical or legal. However, I don't think you have to be out for that time, because that can be dangerous to be out, especially if you don't pass, especially for trans women and especially trans women of color. And I think and there's no way to enforce it. I think the pathologization of trans identity and trans care is absolutely detrimental. It has been to our whole community for years. And I think that there are no ways to enforce barriers for safety that are equitable and just. And so while I have thoughts on, I think at the end of the day, it depends on the person and should be done with care, but I have yet to meet anybody who has done it carelessly. And I've met a lot of people, and I know that the rates of regret are far lower than any other operation of anything comparable, like any sort of cosmetic operation. And I know that it is effective in a way that no antidepressant has ever been in mitigating suicidal ideation and action. And I think that, yeah. Sorry, I get really strung up about this. This one is a hot spot for me. I apologize for going off a bit. That was probably too much, but yeah, I think that trans youth need more access to gender affirming care and options, and a lot of the fear that is stirred up around it is just fear mongering rooted in transphobia.
Okay, so with brief comments, Bob Gawne, Hurley Jim, Jerry Rubin, and we'll close there.
Okay, thank you, Roger, for your extremely well thought out responses, initial presentation and responses. This is just a simple thing. Courtesy of my good friend Joanne, I got some tickets and went to the musical called Transparence the Musical yesterday at the Mark Taper Forum. And my reaction was very positive. I would tend to say, go see it. It was mainly about trans people, and it was very moving and very uplifting. But just in case, Roger, you have any, I don't know if you've seen this. You might have thoughts that are different from mine, but just from my own point of view, I thought it was wonderful, and I encourage people to see it.
Okay, Hurley Jim.
Thank you. Thank you, Chaplain Joseph. And thanks, Roger. Wow, this is almost overwhelming, so much good information that, you know, I think if people knew a lot of what you were talking about and what we've been talking about, it would be very hard to continue the oppression of trans people. I identify as trans, have for a long time. And I know you and I got to know each other in the queer prom. I've always supported you. I love getting to be in forums where I get to hear the introduction, and that's one of the ways I learn more about you. You know, how you're growing and how things are going for you, and it's just great to see. And I also feel very supported by you. I always have. I appreciate that. I was exploring my trans aspect of myself during the period when passing was like really important, and there were people in the trans groups I was in who had moved from, say, the Southeast Alabama, where they were part of law enforcement, and you know, the culture of law enforcement, if they had tried to be trans in that culture, just would have, you know, been death, basically. So, you know, a lot of the focus was on passing and not being read. That wasn't an issue for me. It's been something, you know, I can make use of the fact that I look, well, you know, like a cisgender white male, because I can be a father figure. I can also be a mother figure. I've had my kindergarten children call me mommy and stuff like that, but I have, you know, often been seen as a father figure. So that's useful too. And I guess, you know, trying to stay focused and brief. I've been thinking about this whole save the children. You know, that is the mantra that is being used by the extreme right wing now as part of transphobia and everything that is going on there. And all these things have histories. This one, as I know, goes back at least to Anita Bryant and the campaign in Florida, Save the Children. And without going into that history, really, just that idea of save the children, whose children, what children, which children. They're talking about white children. That's who they're talking about, white Christian children. And they're not, you know, I think we do want to save the children. We want to save all the children. We want to save the trans children, you know, Black, brown, indigenous. We want to save everyone, you know, so we just maybe need to find a way to use that in our favor. So thank you so much, Roger. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to close with Jerry at this time.
Oh, thank you very much, Roger. And I wanted to comment on something Rachel said about the numbers and how the ultra right wing switched after gay marriage. But I'm sure you're aware that they're even trying to backtrack on that now. And these are the kind of people that seem never to give up. And Mike Pence and others still feel that gays, etc., can be cured, and they want to reopen that debate and go backwards and backwards yet still. So that's why it's so important to keep a coalition built and support each other in every way. And I personally believe that's one of the most important things. Is we could have disagreements and debate, but we need to be unified. We need to get a voter turnout and deal in a really understanding way, in a realistically idealistic way, to win the vote next time and start moving along in the right direction rather than slipping backwards. So I want to thank you all and everybody here with the Church in Ocean Park in every way, shape, and form for being so inclusive. And that's so important.
Okay, thank you all so much. It has been a very informative and very impressive demonstration and collaboration. And we give thanks to Roger Gawne for enlightening us and inspiring us and making us even more. Well, all that I can say, I can go back to the quote of Elliot Page that I gave before the message. The more I hold myself close and fully embrace who I am, the more I thrive. Go forward with this conviction and with this assurance. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Roger. Thank you, Chaplain Joseph. Thank you, everybody. Take a stretch, please.
Hmm?
Let's just keep it easy. Oh, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Now, this is a verse that Pete Seeger wrote. Oh, some say it's dark and we cannot see, but love lights the world for you and me. Some say turn around, just go hide, but we have the power to change the tide. Some call life a sad old story, but we see a world that's bound for glory. The real power is yours and mine. Let your little light shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Let it excuse me. Oh my. Well, song might be over. Let it shine.
Let it shine.
Thank you.
Let it shine.
Thank you, Chaplain Joseph.
So for our closing song, Larry.
I don't get to sing many Lady Gaga songs, so I'm glad for the occasion. My mama told me when I was young, we all are born superstars. She rolled my hair and put my lipstick on in the glass of her boudoir. There's nothing wrong with loving who you are, she said, 'cause it made you perfect, baby. So hold your head up, girl, and you'll go far. Listen to me when I say I'm beautiful in my way, 'cause God makes no mistakes. I'm on the right track, baby, I was born this way. Don't often regret, just love yourself and you're set. I'm on the right track, baby, I was born this way. Ooh, there ain't no other way, baby, I was born this way. Baby, I was born this way. Ooh, there ain't no other way, baby, I was born this way. Baby, I was born this way. Don't be a drag, just be a queen. Don't be a drag, just be a queen. Don't be a drag, just be a queen. Don't be. Give yourself prudence and love your friends. Subway kid, rejoice your truth. In the religion of the insecure, I must be myself, respect my youth. A different lover is not a sin. Believe capital H-I-M. I love my life, love this record. Hey, me amorevole fe. Yeah. I'm beautiful in my way. I'm beautiful in my way, 'cause God made no mistakes. I'm on the right track, baby, I was born this way. Hide yourself and regret, just love yourself and you're set. I'm on the right track, baby, I was born this way. Ooh, there ain't no other way, baby, I was born this way. Baby, I was born this way. Ooh, there ain't no other way, baby, I was born this way. Right track, baby, I was born this way. Whether life's disabilities left you outcast, bullied or teased, rejoice and love yourself today. Maybe you were born this way. No matter gay, straight or bi, lesbian, transgender life, I'm on the right track, baby, I was born to survive. No matter black, white or beige, shoulder or orient made, I'm on the right track, baby, I was born to be brave. Oh, baby, I was born this way. No other way, baby, I was born this way. Ooh, there ain't no other way, I was born this way. Right track, baby, I was born this way.
Thank you all so much for a wonderful service. So go forward. The world with all its uniqueness, with all its diversity, with all its wonder is our parish. So go forward, love your neighbor as yourself. So let us prepare for our reaching out. We unmute, and after 3, we say carry on. 1, 2, 3. Carry on.
Carry on.
Carry on.